Hey guys, welcome to the Trash Picture Show. I spent the entire weekend binging on season 2 of The Punisher. It kicked fucking ass, and Jon Bernthal is a powerhouse. I enjoyed season 1, but season 2 is definitely the more superior season. It cuts out a lot of the fat and it moves at a more quicker breakneck pace. There's more characters, and I think it is a lot closer to the comic. A friend of mine pointed out that season 1 really kind of focused on the veterans and how badly the veterans were treated. And while that's cool, and that is a very cool kind of topic to put into this, I think it deferred from progressing a very kind of exciting and nail biting narrative. But season 2 rectifies this. So the season starts off with Frank keeping the down low. He's trying to keep out of trouble after the events of season 1, and he's kind of hooked up with this chick who's working in a bar, and things are going well until Amy, a young girl, a young drifter, goes into the bar and is pursued by some very nefarious individuals. And Frank, being Frank, can't leave it well alone, and shit hits the fan. So we have Frank teamed up with this young streetwise girl, and there's a fantastic dichotomy. I didn't like Amy at the start. I thought she was like this bitchy little teen, but as the story progresses, you realise she's just a kid who's trying to survive. She's had a hard upbringing, and she's doing her best. She wants to just stay out of trouble and not get caught. So you have this kind of paternal relationship where Frank is like a frustrated dad who's trying to look after his teenage daughter, and it's fun. It lends a lot of humor, but it also lends a lot of heart because Frank does end up caring for this girl a lot, and he goes through a lot of pain for her. To make matters worse for Frank, while he's dealing with having to look after Amy, Agent Midani informs him that Billy Russo has come out of his coma and is totally unhinged. Now, Ben Barnes' performance is fucking amazing in this show. I have never felt so sorry or so much empathy for a shitty human being as I do Billy Russo in this season. After sustaining multiple injuries from Frank in the last season, he has essentially lost his memory and he has gaps, so he has forgotten that he's betrayed Frank. He's forgotten that Frank mutilated him and left him for dead. So he is confused and immensely dangerous. The cool thing is, the series also subverts the audience's expectations because we do get Jigsaw, but not in the way we expect. Billy's face is silhouetted or covered in a hood or covered in a mask, but when it is revealed, while his face is scarred, it's nowhere near as graphic as the comic or as gruesome as the comic. The Jigsaw persona only comes out when he dons a mask that he made on advice from a very nefarious doctor who was treating him, and he becomes Jigsaw when he wears this mask. It's like a comfort blanket, and he decides to raise an army of vets and essentially take over the underworld of New York with these former army vets who are robbing drug dealers and robbing other criminals. So Frank has to deal with that. To add to Frank's trouble, we also have the Memmonite. The Memmonite is a former mob enforcer who has turned to religion, but due to actions that Amy had done in before this show, he's now hunting her on the behest of a particular family, and this guy is fucking dangerous. Again, as I said, Jason Aaron's character, the Memmonite, was cool, but he was very two-dimensional. Like in the comic, the Memmonite has two sons and his wife is dying from leukemia, but the show fleshes out his character. It shows that he has gone through all this stuff to escape his past, and now in the pursuit of Frank and Amy, he has to go back to this dark place, and he's a scary character. He's a dangerous character, and when him and Frank come to blows, it's like some kind of natural disaster. They fuck each other up, and the Memmonite is no character to kind of like to mess with, and the guy who portrays him is awesome. I was I was shocked they picked this character, but again, it was clever. They didn't take an established character and put him in the show. They took a very two-dimensional character and built their own variation around him. So I think that really added to the show. Other characters that return, we have Agent Madani, who is kind of still suffering from PTSD after being shot in the head by her former lover Billy. You have Curtis, who is a counselor for army vets and Frank's best friend, who ends up getting such a fucking doing and a beating, and all he's trying to do is help Frank, but he sticks by Frank regardless. Karen Page also makes a return to look after Frank when something befalls him, and Detective Mahoney, who's essentially this series' version of Soap, Detective Soap. His heart is in the right place, but he's not a good cop. He's not good at his job. He tries to arrest Frank, and it ends up in a fucking crazy car chase. But by and large, the characters are really, really, really well fleshed out. The fight scenes are awesome. It really catches you in the first episode when Frank goes in to save Amy from two female mercenaries in the bathroom. That bathroom fight is fucking nasty as fuck. My favourite episodes are also the third episode, which is like Assault on Precinct 13, and we have Amy and Frank being captured by a small town sheriff and his deputies, and the Mennonite and his lackeys lay siege to the police station. So it was very kind of Assault on Precinct 13. The sheriff realizes he needs Frank's help to stop the attack, and the standout fight. While the bathroom fight was cool, the fight in the Russian gym was fucking brutal and amazing. I actually found myself audibly laughing, and I don't know if it was some kind of uncomfortable reaction, but Frank has to fight a brick shit house of a Russian, and his punches are no good, so he uses dumbbells like brass knuckles, and it is the most vicious, ridiculous beating I've ever fucking seen. That's the standout fight for me. They do take lots of elements from the Jason Aaron Max comics, as I said, the Mennonite, but there's also elements taken from the Greg Hurwitz Girls in White Dresses comic, where Jigsaw is donning a mask, and he uses a particular tactic in order to kind of get to Frank, which is also in that comic. And I just think that this was a very kind of well thought out, well orchestrated Punisher season. The first one was good, but I think it dipped in the middle. This does slow down in some parts, but I never felt it dragged. And if this is indeed the last season of the Punisher, it has definitely ended on a high note, because it's badass, and it ends with Frank being fairly badass and doing what Frank does. If you guys enjoyed the season, if you've watched it, I highly recommend checking out Jason Aaron's run on the Punisher. This one has the Mennonite, and this one has Jigsaw and his army of cartels, and this one has Frank at a low point. Speaking of performances, going back to it, Ben Barnes, between this and Westworld, he does a fantastic job of playing shitty individuals who you still have to end up feeling sorry for. They're a victim of their circumstance, but they're still shitty individuals. I think the standout moment for Billy is when he's like at his lowest point, and you have Alison Shane's Rooster playing in the background, and that was just like, oh Jesus, I feel so sorry for this guy, even though he's an absolute bag of shit. So yeah, Ben Barnes' performance in this was fucking amazing. He was the standout for me. But yeah, guys, if you get a chance, definitely check it out. This is a nice kind of hurrah. If it is the last season of Punisher we're getting, this is a nice hurrah to it. And if you've any thoughts on the episode, or if you've any kind of things you want to ask about the comics, or if there's any Easter eggs you noticed, leave them in the comments below. And yeah, have a good one. Take care. Bye now.